Welcome back to The Emotional Man. Today I want to talk about an interesting book I've been reading. It's called Take Back Your Family: From the Tyrants of Burnout, Business, Individualism, and the Nuclear Ideal. It's by Jefferson Bethke. I think I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. It was interesting. He's a Christian author, and essentially his premise is that the nuclear family is the problem for the degradation and the kind of destruction of the family. And along with other factors such as a consumer-based and hyper-individual culture in the West. And he starts out, and one of the interesting statistics he pulled out, and this is from a website that I also went and looked up after reading it. It's by Asher and Lyric. It's a influencer couple that does travel. And they compiled a really interesting database or a list of the most family-friendly countries to raise a family. And I had assumed that the United States would be at least top 10. Now, they are only looking at the countries that are part of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So there's 35 countries. And guess where the United States lands? Dead, I guess, second to last. That's right. The United States is the second worst place to raise a family. They organize it around 6 different factors. There's the safety index, the happiness index, cost index, health index, education index, and time index. And then they get a letter grade. So the United States has a negative 81 for safety index. That's an F. A C plus for the happiness index. A F for the cost index. It is more expensive to raise a family in the United States than, say, Chile, Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Greece. Then look at the health index, D minus, education index, C plus, and time index, F, minus 93. Guess who's beneath us? Mexico. Number 1 is a bunch of, the top 10 are a bunch of Nordic countries. Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Luxembourg, Denmark, Germany, Austria, Belgium, and Czech Republic. Most of them are fairly social in that they have a very large, small population and high safety net. Now, Jeff's take on the family is that essentially we have created a factory for the family that's very consumption focused. Essentially, we extract resources as quickly as we can. He compares the different cultures between like a factory and a farm, and it's a really great, let me actually pull this open. There's an interesting chart. It says the factory formed family centers around consumption, acts like a club, it's linear with no limits, it outsources, like childcare, and has amnesia. We forget where our family roots come from. Whereas a farm formed, and he's comparing kind of the industrial age of the United States compared to pre-industrialization, centered around contribution, looks like a team, rhythmic and lives within limits, has ownership, and they stay formed multi-generationally. I guess my question for everyone is, how do you feel like your family kind of fits within those two paradigms? Looking back, I had a fairly nuclear family. My parents, from either side, didn't really interact much with the generations before us. We cut ties due to some family issues for most of our lives, and just reintegrated, redeveloped, reconnected with those relationships much later in my life, partially due to the death of my grandparents on one side. Whereas on my other side, both grandparents were dead by the time I was old enough. I remember meeting my grandfather once. They had some health complications. When we're looking at how families operate, one of the issues that we talk a lot about is having a lack of vision. Where there's no vision, the people perish. And what does it mean to have a vision for your family? And does that vision entail your family staying together and having multi-generational relationships? Are you going to have a relationship with your grandchildren, with your great-grandchildren? Do you foresee your children having children? When we think about having a vision, we think about the size of the family, the culture. Will the culture survive past your children leaving your household? And so as we think about the future, we think about the vision and purpose for our families. Are we trying to create something that is multi-generational? Now, because Jeff is Christian, he talks a lot about a very biblical New Testament, Old Testament focus on family relationships. How the purpose for the family is to provide for children and to multiply and replenish the earth. It is very multi-generational focused. And how a lot of the social network, especially in Old Testament, New Testament times, was from the family. So if you came down on hard times, you weren't on food stamps, you had a relationship with your family. What would it look like if you had the connections with your family? And by I say family, I'm not just talking about your parents, your grandparents, but what about your cousins, your aunts and uncles? What would that look like if you could rely on your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents if you came down on hard times, like having a child or a job transition? Are you able to rely on that network? And when you're thinking forward for your own family, is that what you envision? Or are you envisioning the nuclear ideal that we've had since the 1950s and 60s? Something to think about. As you're looking to define success for your family, do you see your family going forward as a nuclear, where once your children leave the house, that's it? You don't have orbit around the family, but you end up in a nursing home and you don't really have a whole lot of connection with them? Or do you see playing a role in the lives of your children's families? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.